Oh, my bad. Thought my microphone was on. What up, y'all? All right, let's do it. A lot of shit's been going down. Some things need to be said. Some things need to be reiterated. I'm gonna try to make this stream short, but educational. Maybe we'll have some fun along the way. Who the fuck knows? So, yep. Oh, my bad. Thought my microphone was on. Oh, okay. So, as you all know, there's been a bit of a situation in the Ukraine-Russia area. What up, Al SoCal? Welcome to the stream, man. Just gonna educate myself mostly, but hopefully anyone who watches the stream as well on the whole Ukraine thing. Everything's been developing very rapidly. A lot of people were wrong about a lot of things, but you know, now's not the time to be throwing blame around because I don't think there was any evidence for such predictions to be made. But I don't think anybody could have predicted Russia would do what they did the way they did. But I don't know, maybe that's not true. We're going to find that out today because I think there is some evidence to actually suggest that this has been a long time coming. And for once, the State Department was actually right. Shocker. But, let's see. But really quick, let's play devil's advocate here on the whole sanctions thing, because you're going to hear a lot about how great sanctions are. You're going to, the next few days, weeks, months, years, decades, you're going to hear a whole lot of bullshit about how great sanctions are and who we should be sanctioning and who we should allow to participate in the modern global world. I personally don't think sanctions benefit anyone, but the Washington Post has an article here, 13 times that economic sanctions really worked. It's a little old, I think, completely outdated and thoroughly erroneous probably, but let's give it a read, see what it has to say. Given the concept has been around since at least the Greek ages, says the Washington Post, it's a little worrying that there is still so much debate about whether economic sanctions actually work or not. To me, the debate's over. They don't work. They actually make everything worse. Whatever you're trying to accomplish will be undone by the sanctions eventually. Sanctions catch up to everybody, the sanctioners and the sanctionees, and nobody benefits. But hey, what the fuck do I know? Right now, that problem appears especially acute. Sanctions seem to be the main, if not only, Western weapon for dealing with Russian aggression in Ukraine. Just Monday, the United States announced sanctions on those individuals close to President Vladimir Putin, part of a broader campaign of targeted visa bans and asset freezes on the Russian elite over Russia's actions in Ukraine. However, the success of sanctions already in place is proving hard to ascertain. As Russia's deputy prime minister said of the last round of U.S. efforts, "Send me your teeth ground in impotent rage." So let's see, let's skip to the good part. So when have economic sanctions actually worked? One of the best known investigations of that question is Economic Sanctions Reconsidered, first published in 1985 by Gary Clyde Huffbauer, Jeffrey J. Schultz, Kimberly Ann Elliott. The book, now on its third edition from 2009, attempts to access the aims and success of every economic sanction for which you can find data. Let me see. So, Al SoCal, this is affecting or will affect most of us. Yeah, I mean, it's looking like it. Karen, have you seen Ukraine on Fire? I think it's called. Mr. Stone did it. Everyone should watch it. We can watch that. We can definitely check that out, Karen. This is our time, Karen. We do whatever the fuck we want. So, let me see. I'll try not to forget that. But let's check out these sanctions that supposedly worked, right? So 1921, the League of Nations versus Yugoslavia. In 1921, the League of Nations threatened economic sanctions against Yugoslavia if it attempted to seize land from Albania. Yugoslavia backed down. Well, that's sanctions 1, letting people eat and spend money 0. Huh. Yugoslavia totally backed down like a little bitch because the League of Nations, they threatened economic sanctions. So I guess sanctions do work. The world's a better place. I'm eating crow over here. 4 years later, The League of Nations threatened sanctions against Greece unless it withdrew from Bulgaria's border territory. Greece withdrew. Yeah, 'cause they couldn't handle all the sexy-ass sanctions being thrown their way. And all them starving little-ass kids. What's the matter, Greece? Too much for you? Yeah, maybe start sanctioning your own smaller territories. Like fucking, like the League of Nations did. But anyway, let's skip on. 1948 to 1949, United States versus Netherlands. As the Dutch East Indies struggled to become an independent Indonesia after World War II, the United States suspended the Marshall Plan aid to authorities in the region after the Dutch arrested Indonesian leaders. After threats of sanctions, the Dutch agreed to Indonesian independence in 1949. The sanctions cost 1.1% of the Dutch gross national product. So that's great. Some threats were thrown around, and then people complied with the threats. I mean, you could literally say that about anything, right? I went up to some random lady, put a gun to her face, and she gave me all her money. I guess putting guns to people's faces, I guess that works. It works. It got me free money. We should all do it all the time. I mean, it works, right? It's all that matters. I got the money. Who cares what societal impact it has? You know? Fuck it. Let me see. Karen says the last thing Putin wants is a war. He knows he would lose. He just wants to stop fucking around over there and leave. Oh, he wants us to stop fucking around over there and leave him alone. I mostly agree, Karen. Seems that way. You know. But don't worry, we're going to get into all that, Karen. We're going to get into all that. This is just the warm up. See what's going on with these historical sanctions and how much good they've done humanity. Let's check it out. Between 1961 and 1965, the United States applied sanctions against the Dominion of Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. Okay. I did not know that. After the socialist government of Sirimavo Bandaranaike was accused of expropriating the assets of U.S. and British oil companies. The government fell in 1965 largely because of the economic effects of these sanctions, which cost 6% of the country's GNP. So yeah, we're really breaking these countries. We're showing them what for. Thank God we have the power of sanctions. Like, what could go wrong? You sanction, you coup a few countries, and everyone lives happily ever after that. That's how it works, right? You know, the countries, they get in line. You know, they start practicing human rights, and everyone's well fed and nourished despite the sanctions somehow, magically. And yeah, dude, everyone's happy. In 1965, the United States canceled food and military aid to India in a bid to force it to change its agricultural policies and to voice displeasure over its war with Pakistan earlier that year. In 1966, Indira Gandhi's government proposed new agricultural policies, and U.S. aid resumed the next year. The economic cost was 0.8% of Indian GNP. So, guys, it looks like sanctions do work. They help cripple countries and bring misery to everybody. But it does help teach these countries a valuable lesson about not doing what the United States wants or other powerful countries. So, you know, sanctions, just like guns and knives, they're effective weapons and effective tools for bullying people and getting them to do what you want, regardless of the consequences or outcomes, or whether who's in the right, you know. Might is right, as they say. Oh, boy. So, United States versus Taiwan. Let's say, I guess we can do a few more before we move on here. In 1976, the United States learned that Taiwan was secretly developing nuclear weapons, so the United States delayed its export of nuclear material to the country. Taiwan later announced that it was abandoning its plans. The estimated economic cost was 0.1% of Taiwan's GNP. So yay, we stopped Taiwan from using nuclear. Yay. Hopefully we can stop them from building infrastructure and doing all sorts of first world things. Hopefully they haven't discovered computers yet. Has anyone told Taiwan about computers? I hope not. God, they might catch up to us. Come on, guys. We got to win this thing. Got to win no matter what. If we got to pull a few people down, a few countries down for us to stay on top, so be it. Yes. All right. So Malawi, oh god, yeah, this is the one I really want to talk about. El Salvador too. Hold on, we can do El Salvador real quick. In 1988, the United States used economic sanctions to block El Salvador from releasing those accused of killing U.S. citizens. I don't know the details on that, but I mean, that just seems incredibly shady. Using sanctions to basically um, just mess with El Salvadorian like politics and like their justice system. I don't know. I'd have to look into that one, but that seems really fucked up. And I know we've done way worse to El Salvador than sanctioning. Jesus. The United States and other nations significantly cut aid in 1992 in a bid to improve the democratic standards and human rights situations in Malawi. See, Malawi has a democratic standards and human rights situation, so we had to rectify that by starving all their children and babies. Malawi was largely relying on aid. The sanctions were estimated to cost 6.6% of its GNP. That's probably like the most I've seen. Is that the most we've seen so far? 6.6? Let's see. That's a shitload. That's got to be devastating, especially considering that of all the countries we've talked about so far, most of them have been pretty shitty third world countries. But Malawi is by far the worst and shittiest of all those countries. And we actually like sanctioned them. Like I can't imagine how many people fucking died during that period. You see, 1993, Guatemala. So I don't know. So far, I'm not genuinely convinced that we're gonna sanction our way to prosperity, peace, and democracy. But I know we're gonna try anyway, because that's all the United States can do. We spend more on our military than the next 11 countries combined. So there's literally nothing we can do except keep sanctioning and keep bombing. Literally, we can't do anything else, or else we just be walking around with a bunch of weapons we never used. We can't have that. So yeah, we're gonna sanction. We're gonna keep on sanctioning, regardless of the obvious fucking fact that they don't work. I'm actually go ahead and skip to the what do you call it? The epilogue here, the ending of the Washington Post. Because it is, they don't want to outright admit that sanctions are complete trash as a fucking concept. But hold on. So, the authors of Economic Sanctions Reconsidered looked at more than 200 sets of sanctions. So this is not the most reassuring batting average. And it appears that many of the best known sanctions, such as those against South Africa during apartheid, were probably not home runs. Yeah, probably not. Some experts, such as the University of Chicago's Robert A. Pape, have argued that the definition of sanction used in the study is too broad, further weakening the success rate of such economic penalties. Okay. Sounds like bullshit to me. I don't think sanctions really have a success rate, but that's just my opinion, I suppose. There are some factors in the report's favor. However, there were other sanctions that appeared to work. Of course, any sanction rated above 9 means that at least some aspect of the sanctioner's goals were achieved. So that's all a good sanction needs to be rated above a 9. You know, those are the only conditions. As long as the sanctioner's goals, as long as at least some of them were achieved, then it was a good sanction, right? So if the sanctioner's goals was to cause mass starvation and famine and disease and, you know, just take that country back to like the Stone Age, if that was the sanctioner's goal, then basically that sanction was like at least a fucking 10. Like mission accomplished, bravo. Let me read the last of this horrible, cynical, and depressing fucking article. There's another confusing factor. Targeted sanctions, such as those used against Putin's allies, are a relatively new form of economic sanctions. They only emerged after the broader sanctions that we saw before the 1990s fell out of favor, when the worrying humanitarian effects on Iraq were revealed. So people didn't get it before like 1990. There wasn't like one person on the planet that was like, you know what? Starving little kids and like women, and I mean, let's not forget about the men, right? Shit. But you know, I bring up the kids and women to really drive it home that this is the only outcome. It's just pain, mass pain and starvation and death. Oh, there's one more paragraph. Excuse me. The jury is still out on whether sanctions actually work. The early assessments of these targeted sanctions that they are quite useful in signaling displeasure and as tangible signs of support for international norms. Kimberly Ann Elliott, one of the economic sanctions reconsidered, told me in email. Their utility in changing objectionable behavior is more questionable. So, yeah, Kimberly Ann Elliott has some reservations. I don't think sanctions do a lick of squat diddly, except upset fucking governments and their people. Really, the only reason the United States uses it is to turn people against their own governments. And they've had varying success with that, but mostly failures. And it's always come to bite them in the ass. These people, you know, best case scenario for the sanctioners at least, the country goes to shit and the people leave. And where do they go? They come here or they go to Europe? Is that what you fucking want? Bunch of mass migrants coming here so the right wing can bitch that they're taking our welfare and jobs. Is that the master plan? Is that what we're going to keep doing for all eternity? Anyway, let's go to the next page here. Really quick, while I was coming up with a thumbnail for this this vid, I came across this article. For the 2.4 million children on brink of starvation in Yemen. You know, this kid looks familiar. It's the young child from my thumbnail. I hope this kid's still alive, but I'm not gonna hold my breath. Actually, I think he's probably ended up being among the 2.4 million kids. That's fucking tragic, because our country, along with Saudi Arabia, is responsible for sanctioning this country and starving these kids. Sorry, Karen. Let's see what you got here. Read Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I keep hearing that. I've heard that tossed around. Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins, or Dark Money by Jane Mayer. Yeah, let me write these down, because I have heard people recommend that Economic Hitman thing to me. Right, I'm sorry. Confessions. But yeah. So yeah, in this article, really quick, it says up to 2.4 million children could be pushed to the brink of starvation as the coronavirus pandemic sweeps across war-torn Yemen amid a huge drop in humanitarian aid funding. The UN Children's Agency is warned. This article is from 2020, by the way, just so you know. It's not super recent, but I think it's still super relevant, because these sanctions have the same fucking effect on every country. It starves a few less kids. Some sanctions starve a few more. The goddamn result's always the same. So here we go. Did I read this part already? As humans' devastated health system and infrastructure struggle to cope with coronavirus, the already dire situation for children is likely to deteriorate considerably. The UNICEF said on Friday in a new report, if we do not receive urgent funding, children will be pushed to the brink of starvation and many will die, said Sarah Basilo Yanti. I just pronounced that UNICEF's? I'm just going to just say the letters. The UNICEF's representative to Yemen. Yeah, I don't know what the acronym stands for. I'm super ignorant. Alright, the international community will be sending a message that the lives of children simply do not matter. Seems that way. But yeah, and that's just Yemen. Let's pull up this page. Let's see how many countries we actually are sanctioning recently. So here's let me see, the Department of Treasury's.gov page. We have Afghanistan-related sanctions, Balkans-related sanctions, Belarus sanctions, Burma sanctions, Central African Republic sanctions, Chinese military company sanctions, some narcotic sanctions. I'm sure that has more to do with like Mexico and shit. Counterterrorism sanctions, Cuba sanctions, cyber-related sanctions, Democratic Republic of the Congo-related sanctions. I did a whole video on that. That was my first sanction video. Check that out. I wish I could say it's in the description, but it's not. I forgot to put it there. But whatever. Ethiopia-related sanctions, foreign interference, and United States election sanctions. Very broad. Look at these broad sanctions. Just, yeah, like anybody who we think interfered in our election, fuck it, just sanction them. Hong Kong related sanctions, Iran sanctions, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya sanctions, Mali. Mali's actually among one, it's like a handful of African countries that had coup attempts in it. Like this year alone, there are like 5. It's like Mali, Sudan. Where was that? I think I just saw it too. The Burqa. I think it was Burma. There was a bunch in Africa. Like we were breaking records for how many coups we were doing this year. It's ridiculous. This country's ridiculous. And then Russia pulls shit like, you know, trying to conquer Ukraine because the whole fucking thing was taken over by a far-right government, which is giving them hell. Like, what do you think was going to happen, America? Not to, of course, I gotta qualify everything. You know, not that I approve of Russia's mass murder or anything. I don't approve of that shit whatsoever. But it's not like they're the most dangerous country on the planet. You know how many fucking capitals they would have to bomb to catch up to the United States? You know how many fucking people they'd have to drone to catch up to the United States? You know how many countries they'd have to invade in order to catch up to the evil that the United States is at right now? So, I mean, everyone else can lose their shit. I'm not going to lose sight of, you know, where the real evil is, where the real evil's always been, and how Russia got to that situation, how Ukraine got to that situation, and how heavily involved the United States was. You know, I didn't even finish reading all. There's so many fucking sanctions, so many coups. Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, Venezuela, Yemen, Zimbabwe, not to mention Russia, North Korea. Whew, that was a lot. And those are just the sanctions. I wish there was like a list of coups, but I probably would have to dig really deep in the fucking government archives to find that. But, I mean, I can find all the declassified and well-known coups on Wikigoddamnpedia right the fuck now. So, I mean, a ridiculous country. So Karen left a little link. Definitely gonna watch that. So pretty much went through most of my videos, I think. Let me see. Oh yeah, I was gonna read this article about how the United States perpetrated the 2014 coup in Ukraine. All right. So basically, Ukraine had a neutralist government that was like, Russia's not great, but they're not the worst. You know, America's like, America's not great, but they're not the worst. But that government went bye-bye. After the 2014 coup, as it says right here, a rabidly anti-Russian government. Whoops, what the fuck? Yeah, anyway, a rabidly anti-Russian government replaced it. That's the Ukraine that Putin just invaded. So, I mean, you see the connection here. Rabidly anti-Russian, they get invaded by Russia. You know, you see the connection there. So it's not like, you know, we could have probably predicted it. And supposedly the State Department, they had evidence, but I didn't believe the motherfuckers. No one did. No one thought the State Department was right. Come on. What are you going to believe those losers for? The ones who lied us in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, come on. So I'm not mad at anybody. Like, I know there's a lot of people on the left right now just, you know, eating crow because they didn't think Russia was ever going to invade. But, you know, I'm not mad, yo. I'm among them. They got me too. I was like, oh shit, Putin. Kind of faked everybody out there. Let me see. Okay, this is the page I'm allowing. So I'm going to go ahead. We can look at Karen's vid now. Let's see here. Let's go. Yeah. Oops. Did I not? Hold on. Okay, hold on. Whoops. And my computer just freaking crashed. Said something wrong. Uh-oh. Oh, shit. Ugh. So I'm on this tablet that's like really shitty. And it's like on the verge of overheating right now. Let me see. HPS. I'm trying to look at Karen's vid right now. But hold on. Here's what we'll do. There we go. And okay, that should do it. Sorry about that, guys. I have a really shitty tablet, but yeah, it looks like. Okay, here we go. Let's see, we're 33, 57. It's a long one, huh?
Here in Kiev in recent days, the Maidan, Independence Square, has turned into a full-scale war zone.
More clashes in Ukraine's capital, Kiev.
There is absolutely no doubt that snipers are working here. I've counted 10 bodies.
Мы и сегодня не знаем, кто стрелял в людей. Это проблема.
Now on the brink of a civil war, at least 70 dead so far, and the death toll rising.
Эти технологии, еще раз говорю, от них не застраховано ни одно государство.
What we saw here today was a revolution.
Хотите узнать, что происходило на Украине?
We've invested over $5 billion to assist Ukraine in these and other goals.
Вы знаете, в большой политике, о чем бы ни говорили, все равно будут говорить о деньгах.
NATO has expanded into 13 countries, up to the borders of Russia. 13 countries.
The focus has to be on not allowing this crisis to turn into hot war between Ukraine and Russia.
Эта тема очень опасна. Это тема войны. Сегодня спокойно никто не должен себя чувствовать.
Nice. I don't know what this naked chick has to do with Russia, but nice. Some nice effects. Wow, dude, I hope I look that beautiful when I'm burning under like nuclear fire. When Russia drops its payload on my house, man, I hope I'm just like that, like, oh, they're here, and so I die, and so I die. Alright.
Ukraine. It's an ancient and proud land, with a rich history, filled with much beauty, heroism, and sacrifice.
Dude, they say that about every land. Aaron's from the proud land, the rich history.
A place where East meets West. This is the flag of Ukraine. The blue represents the sky. The gold, its seemingly endless fields of wheat. Ukraine is a prize many have sought, and much blood is spilled.
Yeah, I just want to I just want to say I do not seek the prize of Ukraine. I want nothing to do with that country. As far as I'm concerned, Russia can have it, even though I don't approve of their tactics. But I don't think it's a prize. I think it's just some country. Anybody who I pity the people who think they need it though.
Quest to possess it. Ukraine has been the pathway for Western powers as they attempted to conquer the East in World War I and World War II. And every time, the Ukrainian people ended up paying the highest price for these grand games of power. History doesn't repeat, but it surely rhymes, said Mark Twain. If one looks closely at the history of Ukraine, one will notice many rhymes. Being surrounded by stronger powers, Ukraine has needed a lot of cunning to survive, and the art they truly mastered with time is the art of changing sides. In the middle of the 17th century,
The art of changing
Ukrainian
sides.
leader Bogdan Khmelnytsky broke a truce agreement made with Poland, siding with more powerful Russia. Just over 50 years later, as the Russian-Swedish War was raging, another Ukrainian leader, Ivan Mazepa, broke the union with Russia when he switched sides, joining forces with the Swedish invaders. Many times, Ukrainian history was written by third parties. Seeking to keep the gains of a revolution at any cost, Russia agreed to the humiliating conditions of the Brest-Litovsk Treaty of 1918, which turned Ukraine into a German protectorate. Another historical document that changed the fate of Ukraine was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939.
And so Ukraine getting turned into a German protectorate. Yeah, that probably had a lot of there's probably a lot of reasons why there's a lot of it's probably the reason why there's a lot of neo-Nazis there to this day, or at least it's connected. Because I was always wondering, like, how, like, a country that, like, was so connected to Russia, and so close to Russia, could have that many, like, Nazis or whatever in it. But if you look at Ukraine on the map, it's right next to Poland, and Poland's, like, right next to Germany. So, it's not that far removed from the German aspect. So I imagine, like, how it is now is you have the more Western and Germanic Ukrainians on the west side, and the more Russians on the east. But I'm sure they'll probably break it down in this video.
One of many such agreements being signed between European countries and rising Germany. Attempting to protect his nation from the approaching Nazi threat, Joseph Stalin negotiated a treaty of non-aggression with Adolf Hitler. While promising each other peace, the Soviet and German foreign ministers Molotov and Ribbentrop realigned the map of Eastern Europe, splitting it into German and Soviet spheres of influence. No sooner had the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact been signed than Poland was split. And in September of 1939, Eastern Poland awoke to be Western Ukraine, and a part of the family of Soviet republics and the USSR.
Yeah, makes sense.
But even this bold dividing of lands and nations only delayed the inevitable. Germany broke its promise to the USSR. On June 22, 1941, Germany invaded the USSR, launching Barbarossa, the largest military operation in world history. Barbarossa was aiming for St. Petersburg, Moscow, and Kiev, Ukraine, three destinations of major significance. Ukraine, with its rich lands and resources, was an important industrial and economic source for the USSR. To cut it off from the Soviet Union would strike a big blow indeed. For most of the Soviet Union, the Second World War was about fighting the invaders of their land. But it wasn't quite so simple for Ukraine. The truth is, Ukraine has never been a united country. When World War II broke out, a large part of Western Ukraine's population welcomed the German soldiers as liberators from the recently forced upon them Soviet rule.
Ooh. Hold on. I'm gonna pause it.
The German soldiers as liberators from the recently forced.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen symbols like that in the current and modern Azov battalion. Looks a lot like the symbols that the modern Azov battalion uses. Not exactly like that, but very similar.
Forced upon them.
So yeah, so that explains where the Nazi element in Ukraine comes from. They've been sucking Nazi dick since fucking, well, at least West Ukraine's been sucking Nazi dick since World War II. Jesus. And these are the people we arm. So, you know, so they can fight Russia.
Soviet rule.
Brilliant.
And openly collaborated with the Germans. The real scale of collaboration was not announced for many years after the war, but we now know.
Well, yeah, man. They kept that shit on DL. It's like they kept the collaboration between the United States and the Nazis way under wraps for a long time until, I don't know, basically like the internet came around. That's when people started making the connection between like Prescott, Bush, and the Nazis and shit. You know. I don't get the appeal, man. What's so great about Nazis? Why does everybody want to be one? Why does everybody want to align with them? They don't look like they're having that much fun. Does it look like the Nazis are having that much fun? Not to me. I don't get it.
That whole divisions and battalions were formed by Ukrainian collaborators, such as SS Galician, Nachtigall, and Roland battalions. Just in the beginning of the war, more than 80,000 people from Galician region voluntarily enrolled into Division SS Galician in a month and a half, notorious for their extreme cruelty towards the Polish, Jewish, and Russian people on the territory of Ukraine. Members of these military groups came mostly from the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, the OUN, founded in 1929. This organization had an ultimate goal of creating an ethnic...
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it about why people would choose to become Nazis. And I think they brushed on it just there, the whole nationalism thing. Nationalism seems to come from people who are more or less proud of their country, but maybe their country doesn't deserve all that pride. Maybe their country's going to shit, but they're too prideful to blame their country. So the nationalists shift that blame to other people. Maybe sometimes it's Jews, sometimes it's women or foreigners or immigrants or black people. That's where nationalism comes from. And really, I think Ukrainians, the nationalists in Ukraine, they're just victims of, just like shitty economy, shitty government or whatever. Maybe they don't have as many opportunities as they did during their, during the good old days. Maybe during the Soviet Union or like just after its fall. But yeah, that's how that nationalism grows. You can see it in America. You can see it out here. Poor white people, poor people in general. They end up, not blaming the elites or corporations or, politicians for, their shitty wages and high rent. They end up blaming Mexicans, right? Or Venezuelans or just immigrants, coming from fucking Syria and Iran, fleeing wars that we created. That's who they blame. And that's nationalism. That's how this shit comes about.
Ethnically pure, independent Ukraine, and considered terror an acceptable tool for achieving their ends. Their official flag was black and red, land and blood. It will remain in Ukraine's history long after the OUN will cease to exist. In early 1940,
black and red, that reminds me of like a scab. There's like the colors of like a really bloody scab. It's kind of metal. Like, I respect it. Yeah.
The most radical nationalistic part of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists got its own leader, Stepan Bandera. Severely anti-Semitic and anti-communist, he proclaimed an independent Ukraine in 1941. His German allies frowned upon such an act of self-will, and it landed him in prison for nearly all the Second World War. Not participating in the events physically, Bandera still managed to successfully spread his ideology. Many independent historians estimate that the OUN militia exterminated from 150 to 200,000 Jews on Ukrainian territory occupied by the Germans by the end of 1941.
Dang, that's weak.
The most notorious and outrageous massacre took place September 29th and 30th, 1941, in Babi Yar, Kiev. All pipes of the city of Kiev and its vicinity must appear on Monday, September 29th by 8 o'clock in the morning. Bring documents, money, and valuables, and also warm clothing, linen, etc. Any kites who do not follow this order and are found elsewhere will be shot. 33,771 Jews were killed in this two-day operation of the Nazis and Ukrainian militia.
Fucking ridiculous. What was gained? Nothing. They lost taxpayers. They lost muscle. They lost fucking international respect. It was senseless shit, but whatever. I know you guys already know. It just blows my mind.
Another outrageous massacre was carried out by the Ukrainian Insurgent Army and the Bandera faction of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists in German-occupied Polish Volhynia and eastern Galicia between 1943 and 1944. This genocide of Poles was led by Mikola Lebed. 35,000 to 60,000 people in Volhynia and 25 to 40,000 in eastern Galicia fell victim to this massive ethnic cleansing operation. Sensing the inevitable loss of the German troops, the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists gave up on their former ally and began fighting equally against the Germans and the Soviet forces. In January 1943, USSR troops started pushing the Nazis back, liberating one part of Ukraine after another. Western Ukraine was the last Ukrainian region held by the Germans, finally being liberated in October of 1944. Bandera's bands continued to wage their guerrilla war against the Soviet regime, carrying out bloody raids on Ukrainian villages and towns, and leaving behind chaos and casualties. This war went on until the middle of the 1950s, when the last collaborators were either detained or fled the country. On May 7, 1945, Germany unconditionally surrendered to the Allies. Ukraine remained a part of the Soviet Union. The peace after the Second World War was short-lived. The United States and the Soviet Union, nations who allied together along with England to defeat the Nazis, tragically became foes.
And this is when everything went to shit. Fucking Cold War. Like, literally, the worst war in human history ends. We have the opportunity to bring an unprecedented amount of peace and prosperity to the planet. But what do? With that opportunity, we decide to go to a fucking Cold War with Russia because they like socialism and we like capitalism. That's it. That's how we lost out on our fucking paradise. That's how we lost out on heaven on earth, because their economy is more focused on sharing and our economy's more focused on competition. So we'll never get along. Let's just aim our missiles at each other for like 70 fucking years and arm each other's enemies until everything fucking comes to a boil and we're in an all-out fucking war. Hence where we are right now. That's a great plan. So let's give it up for the fucking Cold War. Mission accomplished. It's brought nothing but fucking tragedy and misery and stagnation to the planet. But, you know, we had to get the commies, right? We had to stop the socialists and their crazy socialist ideas, right?
As the Cold War began. The era of political and military tension between the U.S. and the USSR lasted for nearly 45 years, keeping humanity under the constant threat of nuclear war. In this battle, the United States never lost sight of Ukraine's importance. U.S. intelligence kept a close eye on Ukrainian nationalist organizations as a possible source of counterintelligence against the Soviet Union. CIA documents that just recently have been declassified show strong ties between U.S. intelligence and Ukrainian nationalists since 1946.
And that's how it goes. The CIA, they do all this fucked up espionage and counter-insurgent bullshit, and it's all classified, right? And they end up doing a horrendous amount of damage and destruction and wreaking all sorts of havoc on these countries, and we don't know about it because it's all classified, right? And even if anything leaks, if there's like a whistleblower or anything, we don't know. It's all hearsay and conjecture because everything's classified until like 10 years later. Then it gets declassified, and then we can point our fingers at the CIA and go, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have caused the coup d'etat and then armed all those rebels and all that shit. In the meanwhile, while this shit's just getting declassified, they've never stopped. They've never stopped the coups. They've never stopped their operations. And we've got to wait another 10, 20 years until what they're doing now gets declassified. You know, it's fucking dumb. And we all just got to sit here and just assume that the CIA's, that they're fucking, they're reformed, that they've stopped their operations, their coups, that they've learned anything. They haven't learned shit. They keep pulling the same goddamn plays over and over and over again with the same goddamn results over and over and over again. When have sanctions ever worked? When have these coups d'etats ever went in our favor? They think people are fucking stupid. Like, oh yeah, we're just gonna coup this fucking country and everybody will be cool with it. I mean, we'll just totally ignore it, but at least we'll have power over it, and that's just how life works. No, that's not how fucking things work. You coup a fucking country, you neglect it, it goes to shit. Those people they're gonna take it out on somebody. I know you're hoping they'll take it out on their government, but they might be smart. They might actually know who the fuck's to blame for this shit. They might take it out on you. Sanctioners, talking to you, sanctioners.
From the CIA agency report, it is clear that they were not mistaken about the nature of Ukrainian nationalist organizations or their leader, Stepan Bandera himself. According to an OSS report of September 1945, Bandera had earned a fierce reputation for conducting a reign of terror during World War II.
Oh yeah, I'll check out that video too, Kieran. Check that out.
After the second,
we'll skip around on this one, maybe. You know, it's a good video so far. I like it.
World War, Bandera and other Ukrainian Nazi leaders fled to Europe, where the CIA helped them hide. The CIA later informed the Immigration and Naturalization Service that it had concealed Stepan Bandera and other Ukrainians from the Soviets. The operations involving Ukrainians continued for many years. The Nuremberg trials of 1945 and 1946 brought the political, economic, and military leaders of fascist Germany to justice and revealed to the world the monstrous face of Nazis and the crimes they committed.
Oh man, that was brutal. See that barrel full of heads?
But the Ukrainian Nazis were spared the same fate, and some were even granted indulgences by the CIA.
Like, these horrors that people just commit on each other, you know? It doesn't have to be this way. We can create conditions that minimize these atrocities. I'm not going to sit here on some hippie fucking weed-smoking shit and to be like, oh yeah, you know, we can just eradicate war and hate and poverty. You know, I'm not fucking naive, but I do know for a fact that the amount of chaos and misery we have right now is completely unnecessary and thoroughly avoidable. There's nothing unavoidable about this goddamn shit. The Ukraine thing, that could have been avoided. All we had to do was not arm neo-Nazis. The government of Ukraine would have been neutral, not hostile towards Russia. Russia probably would have just ignored him. Probably. But no, we had to arm neo-Nazis, really hostile and angry neo-Nazis. You know, we had to have NATO surround Russia, put the fucking the pressure on them, until finally Putin and his people popped. So I guess we'll just see what the fuck happens now. I don't know what's gonna fucking happen. I know how we got here. I don't know how it's gonna end. Probably not well.
By 1954, the agency excused the illegal activities of the OUN security branch in the name of Cold War necessity. In 1949, Mykola Lebed, the man responsible for the massacres in Volhynia, was moved to the United States, where he died in 1989 without ever being investigated or pursued as a war criminal. The CIA moved to protect Ukrainian nationalist leader Mykola Lebed from criminal investigation by the Immigration and Naturalization Service in 1952. Perhaps Bandera lost his use to the US, or maybe KGB agents outsmarted the CIA. But in 1959, Stepan Bandera, the leader of the Ukrainian nationalists, was killed in Munich, where he was hiding under the name of Stefan Popel. It would be fair to say that Bandera became a major symbol of Ukrainian nationalism by sheer chance, for he was neither its only leader nor its most powerful one. Dmytro Dontsov was the father of the far-right totalitarian doctrine in Ukraine. Andriy Melnik was the leader of another faction of the OUN. Roman Shuhevich was a general of the Ukrainian insurgent army, and others contributed greatly to the movement. Bandera's dangerous ideology, suppressed by the communist authorities, but supported by external forces, never really died. The seeds of Ukrainian nationalism were passed from generation to generation. Unfortunately, it was just a matter of time before they would once again blossom. In 1954, Ukraine's territory was expanded even more when Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of the USSR, and a Ukrainian himself, generously gave the Crimean region to Ukraine. Historians would argue about the legitimacy of this transfer for many years to come, and 60 years after Khrushchev's gift, dramatic new events would take place in Crimea.
The eyes of the world are on Ukraine as the crisis in Crimea continues.
Dozens of heavily armed men seized government buildings in Crimea.
Should Ukraine just shrug its shoulders and say, okay, Crimea, it's lost?
And the old arguments would heat up once again. The Cold War would heat up and cool down by turns, while both rivals were obsessively building up military capacity. The turning point took place when the new era, perestroika, came to the USSR with its new leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, in the middle of the 1980s. Perestroika meant restructuring towards liberalization and democratization. It certainly had a positive impact on the international situation.
Astonishing news from East Germany, where the East German authorities have said, in essence, that the Berlin Wall doesn't mean anything anymore.
But inside the USSR, the weakening of Kremlin control had different consequences. In Ukraine, a nationalistic political organization, Narodny Ruch, or People's Movement, emerged in 1989 due to this new openness. They advocated for independence of Ukraine from the USSR and became an incubator for leaders of Ukrainian neo-Nazism. In 1991, one of them, Oleg Tyagnybok, founded Svoboda, an openly radical nationalist party, preaching the good old principles of Bandera.
Вони готувалися і боролися з москалями, боролися з німцями, боролися з жидвою і з іншою нечистю, яка хотіла забрати в нас нашу українську державу.
Purge Ukraine from the Jews and Russians, Ukraine for Ukrainians, and so on. His statements got him 5th place in the Simon Wiesenthal Center Top 10 Anti-Semitic World Leader Rankings of 2012. But also, sadly, attracted numerous followers.
Jesus.
Dmitry Yarosh founded another extreme right organization, Trizu, or Trident, in 1994. In April 2013, Jarosz became an assistant to a member of parliament from the opposition party UDAR.
Yeah. So I mean, let's talk more about this nationalism problem. You know, these people are all upset about things that are probably the fault of their government, or at least, you know, whatever local powers are in their vicinity, you know, like corporations and whatnot. But they take all that pain being, you know, thrust upon them. Like I don't really know what their specific gripes are. If they're mad at Jews and Germans, it's probably like a job thing or a migrant thing. It's always that shit. Oh, the Jews, they run all the banks, or they're taking all the jobs. All that dumbass shit. If they really wanted to solve these problems and they thought about it, they would be punching up, not down. Hence the whole problem with nationalism. So I don't get it. You know, stop sucking the cock of your government or your nation, your country, or whatever you think. You know, think about actual solutions. You know, holding these fuckers accountable. You know, that's nationalism for you. Let's blame the Jews.
Later that same year, he would become the leader of the most radical Ukrainian Nazi group, the Right Sector. Andrei Parubi would soon appear leading a whole army of ultra-nationalist warriors. And the torch marches would once again light up the streets of Ukrainian cities.
Putin said, Ukraine, me crane, mine crane. I know that joke just randomly popped in my head.
The world drastically changed in August 1991, when the USSR de facto ceased to exist, and the global political map welcomed many newcomers, Ukraine one of them. In modern history, it was the first time Ukraine was truly independent and all on its own.
The red flag came down over the Kremlin tonight as President Gorbachev resigned and brought to an end 7 decades of communist rule in the Soviet Union.
The years after the disintegration of the USSR became known as the Crazy 90s in all the post-Soviet territories.
He's leaving behind 15 independent states which share only a disastrous economy and an uncertain future.
After having been under a government-controlled economy, the free market dramatically changed the rules of the game. New businesses emerged instantly, and the first oligarchs were born overnight. The former country with no class division suddenly became stratified. The chosen few became rich, while the rest had to fight to survive.
So it just became hyper-capitalist after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Сразу же после получения независимости началась еще...
So right after Ukraine became independent, the wild privatization and an open robbery of state property.
Более дикая приватизация и растаскивание имущества государственной собственности.
So basically I assume they were taking like the taxes from the people, spending it on really stupid, ludicrous things. Probably, I heard they were putting a lot of the money on like offshore bank accounts, like Western bank accounts, which is totally fucked, man. Like, you know, the money's supposed to go to infrastructure, obviously, and you know, social programs, whatnot.
Понижение жизненного уровня населения сразу же после получения независимости. И причем какие бы власти не меняли друг друга.
Anyway, that's our guy, man. That's the new bad guy. Get used to that face. You know, God, I forgot. Was that part in 1984 where they would put like Emmanuel Goldstein's face like on the screen, and everyone was supposed to get really mad and angry. I forgot what it was called. Like it had a name for it. It was like an hour of hate or some shit. Anthony Reyes, what's up, nigga? What you doing here, man? Oh shit. Glad to see you, buddy. Watching on Yo Bro Discord. Fuck yeah, man. Miss you guys, man. I didn't want to do this. I know Prop is streaming. I didn't want to do it at the same time as him, but it took all day to like get all this shit fucking organized and squared. And I have to do some lawn shit too. I think Prop's on too. But yeah. Oh yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah, that's gonna be the new. God, I forgot what they called it. It's like the minute of hate in 1984, where they would scream at Emmanuel Goldstein's face. But yeah, Putin. That's gonna be the new face of hate. They're gonna put his whenever they put his face on television or the internet, it's gonna be to like get a reaction out of people. And if you're not having the same reaction as everyone else, man, they're gonna look at you funny. I can tell it's coming. You guys got to read 1984 if you don't know what I'm talking about. Bro, you should pull up sometime. You guys should pull up sometime. Yeah, for sure, man. I don't know if you mean like the server or if you're local, but I'm down, man. I've been busy as shit working, and I've been wanting to do videos on the Ukraine thing, but the goddamn situation is developing so fast. I'm glad I waited to touch it, because I would just look like an idiot maybe like last week. But anyway, Yellow Brick Road. Oh shit. Look, yo, bro, in the motherfucking house. What's up, man? Trying to wrap our heads around this whole Ukrainian situation. Very complex shit. It's not that complex, honestly. United States armed neo-Nazis, and Russia had enough of it, and now we're all fucked. That's like the short version of it. Anyway, let's carry on here.
Для жизни рядового
You ain't black.
Происходил
Yeah, if I got some trolls in this bitch.
систематический грабеж населения,
Consistent robbery of Ukrainian
грабеж
people.
украинского народа. И, конечно, люди уже
And
устали
of
от
course,
произвола, от этой
people who got tired of this abuse of power and this crazy corruption.
Discontent.
So I mean, it's like, who knows? How serious Putin was being there. Maybe he gave a shit about the Ukrainian people. Maybe he's just playing politics, right? Trying to get people on his side. Because this was before the invasion. Who knows, man? We're going to have to scrutinize everything Putin's ever said now. But I do know one thing. America did not help, and sanctions certainly did not help.
Made Ukraine more vulnerable to outside forces, and a new kind of warfare was launched, one not known before, the color revolutions.
Demonstrators clashed with police, hundreds of thousands protesting the results of the election and calling for a new vote.
Ukraine has had two color revolutions in its 24 years of independence. In 2004, crowds of people descended upon Kiev, marking the start of the Orange Revolution. At that time, Ukraine became once again a battlefield of two forces, the Russian and Western governments. The culmination of this conflict took place during the presidential election.
Anthony, how do I feel about crypto? Do I trust that shit? Jesus. I kind of fucked around with Bitcoin and Ethereum for a little bit. I don't think I made any money off of it. I ended up I either broke even or I lost some shit. But no, it didn't take me to fucking Beverly Hills or Hollywood, where those places rich people go. I'm not there yet. Not off crypto. My sister was telling me to get into NFTs. I don't know what the fuck those are. They're like little pictures that are worth, they have like value or something, but they're just like, what, little JPEGs or something. I'm like, I can make NFTs all the goddamn time. Little gifts and shit, man. I should be a millionaire by now. But anyway.
Elections in November of 2004. The two major candidates, Western-backed Viktor Yushchenko and Russian-leaning Viktor Yanukovych, almost equally shared the votes of Ukrainians.
See, Emblem Fate, do I got the skills to animate some Bleach shit? I gotta be honest, I don't normally animate like anime, even though it is something that I want to do. I've kind of been inching towards that, honestly. I do want to get to the point where I can animate things like more complex things a little more fluidly, but right now I'm just, I'm at like moving around pixels and shit and making you know, making them walk and run. If I can do that, I'm like happy. But yeah, nah, I probably couldn't do it just because I would probably get distracted and have some other shit to work on. But let me see. Do I know anyone who could animate your shit? Not only I know anyone either. But I could recommend some programs. Blender, that's what I've been using now. It's a 3D software animation program, but you can run 2D 2D sprites on it. But yep.
By the way, calling Viktor Yushchenko Western backed is not an exaggeration. His wife, Katerina Yushchenko, is a former U.S. state.
Okay, everyone here is cool, Anthony. Glad you picked up on that. I miss you too, yo, bro. Fucking asshole. I like it when yo, bro, yells. When he just looks at the camera and he goes, ah! No, he never does that.
Official and worked in the White House during the Reagan.
Yo, bro's like chill as fuck, man. He's like never yells. Unless he's like super drunk.
The division was along geographic lines. Traditionally, Russian Eastern Ukraine voted for Yanukovych, while Western Ukraine chose Yushchenko. By the announced result, Viktor Yushchenko lost to Viktor Yanukovych, but thousands of people didn't agree with it, and they came to the central square of Kiev on the 22nd of November. The situation received wide news coverage.
The country's election commission ignored reports of fraud.
That's right, all four of you. Fucking immaculate fucking bastards.
Declaring Kremlin-backed Viktor Yanukovych the winner.
International politicians, such as former General Secretary of NATO, Javier Solana, became frequent guests in Kiev, initiating negotiations between parties.
And I hope very much that the goodwill of everybody will be able to overcome this difficulty.
The results of the negotiations, however, were often reached only on paper. Thus, Yushchenko never told the supporters to stop blocking government buildings in central Kiev. Therefore, these non-violent and very...
Who's Amy K? You're gonna have to refresh my memory. That sounds familiar. I mean, she sounds familiar. I'm not sure she is. Did she used to be in the chat?
Orange protests lasted for a month, during which time the previous election results were annulled, marred by massive corruption, and new elections were announced. An important nuance. Just 3 months before, Viktor Yushchenko became a victim to a mysterious and still unsolved poisoning. But it didn't prevent him from winning in the new election. Though, as we shall soon see, there was much more than just the people's will that led to this.
Oh, Amy Klobuchar. Shit. You guys are ridiculous.
Victory. This peaceful revolution and its leader were warmly welcomed by the international community. But the euphoria didn't last long. Yushchenko's government completely failed with reforms and lost its chance to establish democracy, instead descending into infighting. Viktor Yushchenko was not re-elected for a second term, but at the end...
I forgot. Yo, bro, love him some Amy Klobuchar. Man, I tapped that. I mean, I have to put like a bag over her head and tell her to never speak when she's, in my presence. I don't want to hear sound waves, but... Oh, yeah, Amy.
At the end of his presidency, he had the time to make one last gift to his supporters from Western Ukraine.
На завершення я хочу сказати про те, що чекали мільйони українських патріотів і багато років. Я підписав указ за незламність духу, відстоюванні національної ідеї, виявлені героїзм і самопожертву в боротьбі за незалежну українську державу. Постановляю присвоїти звання Герой України.
Yeah, emblem. Like, yeah, I actually do use Blender for like my 2D, GIF and sprite shit. Not all of them, like just my most recent shit. Like all the older ones, I just use Paint and like they're just video editors. But yeah, Blender. I wish I could show you. You can actually see like the little 2D sprites in a 3D environment. You can, it's not the most effective like 2D animation software, but I'm just used to using Blender, so I make it work. No bag. You're fucking pimp, yo, bro. You're fucking G. It's like, I don't need no bag. I don't care how ugly they are. I'm too alpha. I get it up for anybody. It's fucking gangster, yo, bro.
Степану Андрійовичу. Слава Україні!
The hero status of Stepan Bandera was short-lived. In 2010, Viktor Yanukovych was elected president. This time, the international community had no doubts about the legitimacy of the elections. In January 2011, Viktor Yanukovych repealed the hero title of Bandera. Almost 4 years into his presidency, though, another revolution shook Ukraine. Unfortunately, this one was anything but peaceful.
Fancy. Okay, so you fuck with Blender? Hell yeah, man. I could talk about Blender all day. That's a great program. Lots to do on Blender Emblem Fate.
Mr. Yanukovych, I'm an American. I'm an outsider to this situation, and it's very complicated.
Oliver Stone.
I would like, as a filmmaker, just to jump into the action and go to those moments in November 2013. You're president of the Ukraine. You've been president for 3 years at this point. The country is in bad economic shape, very bad. You have a trade agreement with Russia, and now you're seeking to make a better agreement with the EU, with the European Union, and you are negotiating. Can you bring me to that moment and what you're thinking?
Действительно, это был очень сложный период времени для Украины. И нам нужно было найти решение проблем в 2013 году. Поэтому у нас было два партнера. Прежде всего, мы рассчитывали на Международный валютный фонд. Но Международный валютный фонд на протяжении года, когда мы вели переговоры, нам предлагал неприемлемые для нас варианты решения.
The IMF suggests to us unacceptable solutions. Significant rise in utility rates, first foremost, for electricity and natural gas.
То есть рост, значительный рост.
It's going to be a lot more expenses for the people.
При том, что доходы оставались.
Now their income would stay at the same level.
Мы на это не пошли. Мы
Even though they suggested other solutions, but gotten official refusal from IMF in November 2013.
Отказ Международного валютного фонда в ноябре 2013.
Says not just Klobuchar, Yobro loves old white ladies. You should have seen how sad he was when Betty White passed away. Oh, poor Yobro. You know, though they say there's plenty of old and decrepit fish in the nursery home. You'll get them, Tiger.
Оставалась Россия. Россия нам сказала.
Said he cried. Oh no.
Что мы готовы с вами работать как партнеры, если вы учтете наши интересы.
Того, что экономика Украины и России зарождалась как единая экономика, сложились абсолютно уникальные, особые экономические отношения. Рынки в России были полностью открыты для украинских товаров, а при этом наши границы с Украиной таможенные полностью раскрыты. Таким образом, Евросоюз как бы заходил со всеми своими товарами на нашу территорию без всяких переговоров.
И когда мы начали считать балансы, мы увидели, что соглашение, которое подготовлено Европой для Украины, требует больших экономических расходов, компенсаций потерь, а Европа компенсаций не предлагает. При том, что российский рынок при этом для Украины частично сокращался или прикрывался.
Сказали, конечно, если Украина решила так поступить, это ее выбор, и мы уважаем этот выбор. Но мы не должны этот выбор оплачивать.
Наши переговоры с Европой не увенчались успехом. Поэтому на этом пути мы предложили сделать паузу.
Violent clashes erupted in the Ukrainian capital Kiev as more than 100,000 people protested against a government decision to delay an association deal with the EU.
Vitaly, you were Minister of Interior Affairs for the Ukraine during this period, and you were Chief of Police, essentially, of the country. Can you tell me your version of what happened?
I think Yover might have bounced real quick.
From November protests through February protests?
Мы располагали информацией, что протестные акции в любом случае массово планируются и начнутся в 2015 году. Но оппозиция воспользовалась тем фактом, что в начале Кабинет министров, а затем и президент приняли решение временно отложить подписание ассоциации с Европейским Союзом.
Arseny Yatsenyuk, leader of the opposition party, Fatherland. Oleg Takhnibok, leader of the opposition nationalist far-right political party, Svoboda. Vitaly Klitschko.
Like literal Nazi salutes. Crazy, man.
Leader of the opposition party, Udar.
Both EU and Ukrainian officials said on Thursday the suspension of talks on closer ties could be revived after the two-day meeting. But officials said the deal was off the table for now.
Pro-EU protests on the streets of Kiev enter their second day. The crowd of around 1,000 protesters were joined by the leader of the opposition, the reigning world boxing champion Vitaly Klitschko. He called on the demonstrators to maintain pressure on the government after it decided not to sign a major trade deal with the EU.
You go back to Kiev the next day after the meeting with Merkel, and the protests are up, am I right? Can you take me through that period?
There he is. Amy Klobuchar owns you. Uh-oh, you should tell Amy Klobuchar about, was it the 13th Amendment? Or was that the 18th that freed the slaves? Yeah, maybe she doesn't know about that. But you's free, yo, bro. You's free now. We's both free.
Если у меня в самом начале было понимание того, что это мирные акции, и во время мирных акций можно вести диалог, и я к этому был готов.
И говоря о протестах ноября-февраля, необходимо обязательно учитывать динамику их развития, которая происходила на Украине заранее до того. Огромное количество общественных организаций, которые финансировались из-за рубежа, огромное количество журналистов, работающих на гранты.
Robert Perry is a longtime investigative journalist based in Washington, D.C., best known for his major
That he ran back to her. He ran away from the plantation and he had second thoughts. That's sweet. They should make a movie like that. It'd be like Homeward Bound, but like with slaves.
disclosures about the Iran-Contra scandal in the 1980s. He is the founder of Consortium News, where he has reported extensively on the crisis in Ukraine and the forces behind the unrest.
An NGO is a non-governmental organization. Now, many NGOs are quite legitimate. They represent good causes, maybe they help.
Yeah, that's a good observation, Anthony Reyes. Russians sound like mob bosses. I mean, I'd say that the way the United States talk, they kind of sound like mob bosses. Like they sound like really square mob bosses. Don't get me wrong; they sound like the squarest mob bosses on the planet. But I'd say the United States, you know, they've definitely got that criminal mentality, especially when they speak and go about things. But yeah, definitely, maybe it's fair to say the Russians do too, if you want to just be general about it. Emblem Fate. If you ever saw Brickleberry with that black guy who has a disease where he loves old ladies, it describes bro perfectly. What was that one movie? I never saw it, but wasn't it called like Harold and Maude? It was wasn't it about some dude named Harold who was going out with some old lady, Maude? I don't know. You know, there's nothing wrong with banging old ladies. I've had them young. I've had them old. You know, it's all, as long as it works down there, you know, it's all good to go. Age ain't nothing but a number. Shit.
People in a country feed or deal with water problems or deal with various kinds of social problems. But there are some NGOs that have become funded by government entities and serve more the purpose of that government rather than trying to serve the people that they are ostensibly working for. One thing we saw in the 1980s, at that point the Central Intelligence Agency had been largely discredited because of scandals that had been exposed in the 1970s.
For 15 years, the CIA has secretly financed...
Oh, did they spell back wrong?
Been largely discredited because of scandals.
Ah, they spelled back wrong. Ah, fucking Oliver Stone. Oliver Stone needs to fire somebody.
That had been exposed in the 1970s.
For 15
CIA
years,
based
the
coup. That coup wasn't based. Come on,
overseas
man.
activities of the National Students Association. But then there came to light a
They never been with an old lady. God, I never had him too dang old, but I definitely pushed the envelope there sometimes. I won't get into it now. This isn't the time. That's another stream.
fantastic web of CIA penetrations.
So when the
CIA
Reagan administration came...
Okay, now they're doing it on purpose. What? CIA bucked coup? Who the fuck is writing this shit? Oliver Stone needs to fire somebody. The fuck is this?
A fantastic web of CIA.
That's right, yo, bro. Beauty is beauty. And it's in the eye of the beholder. You beautiful people, all of you.
Penetrations.
So when the
CIA
Reagan administration
bucked
came
who?
in,
The fuck?
there was this concept that instead of having the CIA, which traditionally would go into these different target countries, funding the media, funding NGOs, funding different political operations, that was essentially farmed out to a new organization called the National Endowment for Democracy, which was created in 1983. And it would do pretty much what the agency used to do. It would go into one of these countries and it would support various political groups, train activists, deal with journalists, business groups, and try to advance U.S. foreign policy interests, sometimes against the interests of the host government, the target government. And beyond that, they received financial and other logistical help from the National Endowment for Democracy and other U.S. agencies that helped them training activists, working with journalists to get their side presented more favorably. They work on things like how do you get traction, how do you get things to go viral, how do you then use that to generate support for your cause.
That sounds fucking dumb and unproductive. What they really need to be training these people to do is how to be diplomatic with their enemies and come to the table and find nonviolent solutions to their goddamn problems. But that never happened. So guess what? Ukraine's probably not going to exist in a few days because you guys were too fucking busy trying to figure out how to make your TikToks go viral or whatever the fuck America told you to do that you just fucking obeyed like the children you are. So, you know, not to shit on Ukraine too much, but come on. Yeah, I heard of Snowfall. Yeah, I know. I'm aware of the show. I do want to start. I've heard good things about it. I want to start it. My cousin was into it, but it looks good. I know it's like on like at least the 4th season or something now. I know it's been around for a while. But I'm gonna eat this apple. I'm gonna mute the mic so you guys don't hear me.
Report was generated. Mustafa Nayan, a founder of one of Ukraine's new media outlets, Hromadske TV, knew very well how to make something go viral. It was his notorious Facebook post on November 21st, 2013, that brought the first crowds to Maidan.
Я це написав просто, щоб почути, чи є ці люди, чи просто може поговоримо десь у Фейсбуці.
If you don't read the newspaper, you are uninformed. If you read the newspaper, you are misinformed. To deliver your message efficiently enough in the modern world with so many different technologies and means of communications, you must embrace them all. As the disturbing events of Euromaidan started on November 21st, 2013, 3 new TV channels went on the air and suddenly became stunningly popular in Ukraine. Spilno TV, November 21st. Hromadske TV, November 22nd. And Espresso TV, November 24th, directly from opposition protest. These channels went viral, supporting the protests and encouraging more and more people to come to Maidan.
Sorry, let me unmute the mic here. So yeah, that was a pretty important bit of information. How they basically, galvanized these protests and fostered all of this discontent. These three companies come out within 3 days of each other, so they're suddenly super popular, and they all have the same message. So it's obvious what's going on. Rewind that a little bit. So you can see.
November 21st.
So we got Spilno,
Hromadske TV, November 22nd, and Espresso TV, November 24th.
That's how it's done.
Opposition protest. These channels went viral, supporting the protests and encouraging more and more people to come to Maidan.
И первые выступления массовые начались 21 числа, 21 ноября. Сначала акции проходили мирно. На эти акции пришли люди разных категорий. Это были молодые и пожилые люди. Приходили с детьми. Явно было понятно, что с их стороны есть доверие к власти, в том числе.
I'm not sure who Zendaya is. That's not one of Obama's kids, is it? Zendaya? I don't even know.
В числе и к правоохранителям, потому что свободно выходили и никаких намеков.
Gotta give your dogs some nighttime goodies. We're gonna give them some brownies.
На то, что будет в отношении этих манифестантов приниматься какие-то меры воздействия, силовые и так далее, просто не существовало. Значит, соответственно, на охрану общественного порядка выходили правоохранители без огнестрельного оружия. Но среди митингующих уже замечены нами радикалы, которые относились к правым партиям, неофашистским организациям. И 24 числа, 24 ноября, они осуществили первую агрессивную акцию. 24 числа первое было нападение на кабинет министров. И первое нападение на сотрудников правоохранителей, которые охраняли. Второе нападение на правоохранителей службы безопасности Украины произошло 25 числа. Затем небезызвестные события 30 числа.
November 30th of 2013 became the first turning point of Euromaidan and one of its most reported and mysterious events.
Я тогда немножко расскажу, как видел эти события я. Был звонок мне от Попова, глава администрации города Киева. Он говорил, что давайте сегодня мы хотели бы завозить оборудование для новогодней елки на площадь. Я ему объяснил, что до тех пор, пока люди находятся на площади, то этого делать нельзя. В районе часа ночи, когда массовые люди начали расходиться, разъезжаться, я поговорил по телефону с руководителем службы безопасности Украины и спросил его точку зрения по развитию событий. Он сказал, я считаю, что, слава богу, все закончилось. Вся информация идет о том, что все закончилось. Потому что фактически с 21 числа, я в кабинете просто жил и спал какое-то время, может быть, 2 часа в сутки удавалось поспать. Около 3 часов ночи я приехал тоже к себе домой. Завел часы на 6:30 утра, включил телевизор сразу же, когда проснулся. Он у меня был настроен на 5-й канал. И 5-й канал демонстрирует большое количество скорой помощи. И там побитые.
After riot, police attacked peaceful protesters with clubs.
Happened in the early morning hours. Eyewitnesses that were there said that the police did use truncheons.
Меня, честно говоря, пробил просто холодный пот.
Моя первая реакция на
Anthony, you're right. They all do sound like mob bosses.
то, что Майдан пострадал от действий полиции, была мгновенная. Нужно было расследовать, кто дал приказ разгонять митингующих, применять к ним силу. Я был противник того, чтобы к митингующим применялась сила, нарушали права людей.
You dogs have a Kong toy, Kieran? Like King Kong or Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong. There's a lot of Kongs there. You got to be specific when you're talking to millennials about Kongs.
Решений таких Попов самостоятельно принимать просто не мог. А кто для него был самый высокий руководитель? Для Попова был самый большой руководитель, это глава администрации. Сергей Владимирович Левочкин.
Coincidentally, Sergei Lovochkin is a close associate to many U.S. politicians. The security service of Ukraine had evidence that on that night, Lovochkin was in contact with opposition leader Yatsenyuk, where they discussed the clearing of Maidan.
His name is Arson Lee? That's badass.
Installing the annual Christmas tree. News media reported that the riot police cruelly attacked the students peacefully sleeping in their tents. But scenes from the event seem to tell a different story. It appears that the protesters were waiting for the police. Additionally, there were dozens of journalists and cameramen from all the new public TV news outlets prepared to cover the events. And most ominously, a group of well-trained young men arrived to Maidan almost simultaneously with the riot police. They infiltrated the crowd and began provocations with insults, stones, and torches.
The right sector in Ukraine represents a part of the Ukrainian population that has often favored fairly extreme right-wing positions. They had militias that came especially during the Maidan protests. There were groups that were being shipped into Kiev where they would provide the muscle, in effect, for the demonstrations. So the demonstrations went from being relatively peaceful political protests to being increasingly violent.
The first step in any detective work is to establish a motive. It is now said that Sergei Lovochkin is held in high esteem by his powerful U.S. friends. Outraged by what was reported in the news, the Ukrainian people came out in force on the next day to vent their anger with the police actions.
The violence started to take off when?
Фактически жесткие противоправные действия начались уже в декабре 2013 года. События, которые проходили в тот период в Киеве, они были очень радикальные. В них принимали неонацистские организации, молодые люди, которые были вооружены различными средствами. Металлические прутья, биты. В том числе использовалась техника, например, дорожно-строительная, грейдерами, и они грейдерами наезжали на работников правоохранительных органов, на милицию, которая защищала и не давала захватить правительственные здания и здания администрации президента. Как президент мог в такой неуправляемой толпе выйти и с кем говорить? Технологии, которые применялись в тот период времени, они были заранее спланированы.
As veiled and masked as the color revolutions can be, an attentive viewer can see subtle patterns and similarities revealing their true nature. To make crowds act as one obedient group, they have to be united at the unconscious level. The masterminds of color revolutions know this well and have perfected the art. Symbolism is one of the most powerful tools to achieve this end. Revolutionary political organizations with surprisingly similar names and even more similar logos have appeared time and again, almost as omens marking the countries that would be hit by the colored plague next. They are often described as being aware and active, when they're actually trained and radical. They are the ones who take the first shot, literal and metaphorical, to transform the peaceful protests into full-blown coup d'etats. Their fingerprints can be found everywhere on the map of the color revolution.
Hey Karen, send that link to the last video one more time, because I can't find it here. Basically, I just want to see the transition between like the protest and like the actual coup, and we'll move on to the next vid.
Using all the experience of past generations, simple but effective tools like catchy sing-alongs and chanting are employed. Well known for exciting the crowd and creating a group identity, they depersonalize individuals and make them easier to manipulate.
Whoever's not jumping is our Rusky. Oh boy. Look at this conformist shit. But yeah, this playbook is it's as old as the goddamn CIA. Been doing this for so long. They, when they want to overtake a government or coup it, start the protest. Well, first they like sanction the fuck out of the country so no one can eat. Everyone's blaming their leaders. Once they've done that, they'll start the protest or whatever. Make sure that no one's content. And then they just wait till the conditions are ripe for a coup. That's usually when they go in. Done this all over South America. Ukraine is the only difference between South America and Ukraine is, South America, we're empowering the cartels. Ukraine, we're directly arming Nazis. It's fucking ridiculous. Or at least we were. I don't even know if Ukraine is gonna exist tomorrow. Jeez.
Конечно, без денег здесь не могло быть. Такое количество не государственных, различных общественных организаций, грантов, которые выделялось на Украину, это не есть секретом.
Incidentally, one such organization, Hromadske TV, received generous donations from the Dutch and U.S. embassies, as well as from the Renaissance Foundation.
That's $39,965. Or no, $399,000.
An NGO founded by George Soros.
I set up a foundation in Ukraine before Ukraine became independent of Russia. And the foundation has been functioning ever since. And it played an important part in events now.
I like criticism, but it must be my way.
Did you see any evidence of U.S. involvement?
Mark Twain is great.
Did you feel that?
Should have been like a stand-up comedian. That guy's got some one-liners.
Presence from the U.S.?
Очень частыми гостями были представители Соединенных Штатов, конгрессмены, были госпожа Нуланд, приезжала очень часто, у нас были с ней дискуссии. Но после этих дискуссий она шла на Майдан и поддерживала протестующих. И обвиняла правоохранительные органы, применялась чрезмерная сила. На самом деле эти все месседжи мы видели на Майдане.
Well, members of Congress were visiting Ukraine during that period, most famously Congressman John McCain. So some of the people who were...
Man, wish we could skip to the part where Joe Biden's kid goes to the Ukraine, starts doing coke off the hookers' asses and shit. Wonder if they're going to mention that in here.
Challenging their government, their elected government at that point, were being told by the senior U.S. official, a person who ran for president and a top official in...
John McCain, wow, remember when he was alive? God, if he could only see the shit going on today, man, he'd probably had a whole nother heart attack or however the fuck he died first time.
The U.S. Congress, that the U.S. was with them.
I'm Senator John McCain, and it's always a pleasure to be back in Ukraine.
Senator McCain was, in a sense, giving the people in the Maidan a feeling that they had the backing of the most powerful country on earth.
Dang, Mark Twain was right. Ukraine, Mark Twain. History doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. John McCain? Come on, man. I'm playing. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but it does rhyme.
This is about the future you want for your country. This is about the future you deserve.
Делегаций много приезжало. Я говорил, что нельзя говорить, во-первых, неправду. Нельзя становиться на сторону митингующих и отстаивать их права, создавая тем самым и углубляя конфликт. Когда митингующие захватывают правительственные здания и учреждения, скажите, допустимо ли это в любой другой стране?
Oh, yeah. Ever been to America? Said, are the protesters allowed to seize governmental buildings in any other country? Trying to think of a country where we allowed protesters to seize governmental buildings. Can't put my finger on that country, but well.
Стране, например, чтобы посол Украины.
We're about Euphoria. Oh, Euphoria, is that one show with like the sexy teenagers or something? You're gonna go watch that? Have fun, Anthony Reyes. You must know all about the Ukraine already. No, I'm just kidding.
В Фергюсоне и раздавал там пряники или пирожки и обвинял полицейских Соединенных Штатов Америки. Я считаю, что это недопустимо ни в одной европейской
Karen dropping the hammer on the trolls. That's right, a girl.
стране. А почему к Украине было такое отношение?
Who was your highest level of contact with the U.S. government in this period?
Я постоянно имел контакт с Владимиром Байденом, вице-президентом.
That's when Biden was like a young and dapper man of like 75. Oh man, he's even got like 60% of his hair. Jeez. It's like going in a time machine.
Часто с ним телефонные переговоры. Но дело в том, что господин Байден говорил одно, а в Украине делали другое.
And the U.S. ambassador?
Посол Соединенных Штатов в Украине постоянно принимал представителей Майдана у себя в посольстве. Мы это очень хорошо знали, мы это отслеживали, и создавалось такое впечатление, что в посольстве Соединенных Штатов существует штаб, который управляет этим процессом.
In early February of 2014, as the Maidan crisis was getting more violent, there was a phone call that was intercepted. It was a call between...
Yeah, I know you are. Full-time mod Karen. Do your thing. I'm gonna leave it to the pros.
Assistant Secretary of State for European Affairs, Victoria Nuland, and the U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt.
Questions of...
I love you too, man. I try to do more of these streams, but it's just hard, man. It's hard to find the time. But yeah, man, these are always fun. Don't be a stranger.
Credibility are being raised after a private chat between two top U.S. diplomats was leaked online.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, you know, what he needs is Klitsch and Tony Book on the outside. I just think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, I heard portions, I think, of this audio. This is when, let me see, we've got Victoria Nuland, the U.S. State Department Assistant Secretary of the State for European and Eurasian Affairs. So she works for the State Department. And yeah, I remember they're pretty much talking about coup in Ukraine and how they're going to do it and shit. And who they want to put in power. But, excuse me, yeah. Just keep watching here.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Okay. Good. Well, do you want us to try to set up a call with him as the next step?
Sullivan's come back to me VFR saying you need Biden, and I said probably tomorrow for an attaboy and to get the deets to stick. So okay. Biden's willing.
So you had this remarkable...
Get the deets. She's such like a valley girl. Oh yeah, we just met up with some Ukrainians. We got the deets. It was totes cool. You know, it was like whatever.
Where you have these two senior officials of the U.S. government apparently talking about a coup, or how they were planning to restructure the government of Ukraine.
Yeah, we're totally gonna coup Ukraine, you know, as soon as we get the deets, and, you know, let's work out the deets. You know, it's like whatever, dude. Totally fabulous. I don't know, I can't even do a Valley Girl right now, I'm too stoned.
No, exactly.
I'm not saying the whole U.S. government feels that way. There is division on this, but the neoconservative element wants very much to change the strategic dynamic in Eastern Europe. The neocons are very smart people, and they've been at this for a long time. They came in around the issue of propaganda.
Are the neocons smart, or are they just effective? You know, it's like the whole question with sanctions, like, okay, like they work, but do they really work? Like, are they really producing the desired result that like people want, or just like the desired result of minority of fucking savages and psychopaths? I don't know. These are the questions I think we should consider.
They studied how to create hot buttons for the American people. They had this experience when they were getting the American people to get excited about Central America back in the 1980s.
Underneath the regular army, the ground force is being equipped now with Russian artillery.
And they've been applying those same strategies ever since. They remain very dedicated to achieving...
Yeah, exactly. Same fucking strategies. This country could just wake up to the bullshit and the repetitiveness of all this. I mean, god damn. We'd be so much farther along. The planet would be so much farther along. Like, even just keeping the coups, like the wars and the invasions. If we just got rid of the sanctions, you know how much farther along we'd be as a species if there were like no sanctions on the planet. Like, we can even keep the damn coups, you know? I'm willing to negotiate. United States, you can keep trying to coup these fucking countries and totally spit on their sovereignty. Just get rid of the sanctions. All right, let's see what happens when we get rid of the goddamn sanctions and stop starving people and stop cutting, you know, the country's resources off from, you know, fuel and lithium and batteries or whatever the fuck. Let's just see what happens. Huh? Let's give it a shot. Hashtag stop the sanctions. You know, I'm probably like the last person on the planet who could start a successful hashtag, but fuck it. I'm going for it.
Their goals. They still want to get rid of certain governments. They want to do regime change in Syria, for instance, regime change in Iran. They're very skilled at this, and they have a lot of allies now inside the news media, inside the government, and that means that they can do a lot to control the narrative of any story.
I think in America these days, we have somehow told ourselves that there are a lot of ways of dealing with these problems other than hard power. Vladimir Putin cares about hard power.
The neoconservatives can now demonize a leader of a country. That sells with the American people. So you don't just sort of argue a policy, you attack the leader. So the neoconservatives became very skilled at picking out leaders, finding their ugly traits, and then highlighting them. Yanukovych, you might say, was a rather clunky political leader, but you make him into a devil. He's totally corrupt, and he's evil, and he wants to kill people in the Maidan, these wonderful white-hatted demonstrators. So you've got a black hat versus white hat. You keep repeating that basic scenario, and it works with the American people.
We've got to realize what Vladimir Putin is. He's an old KGB colonel that wants to restore the Russian Empire.
You make them into demons, and the American people find that the way they can understand the world. Once that happens, it's very difficult for journalists or anyone else to say, you know, hold it, that guy, he's got more of a gray hat than a white hat or a black hat. And if you say that, you're a Yanukovych apologist or you're a Putin apologist, and then the attacks come on to the person saying it, the journalist, the academic, or whoever.
Any good director will tell you that tempo and rhythm are the most essential components to hold an audience's attention.
Сама технология, которая применялась Майданом, состояла в необходимости сакральных жертв. Это часть технологии.
It can also be called a method of betrayal, when the allies and followers are relentlessly thrown into the revolutionary flame. The idea is simple. When the preparation work is done, the trigger just needs to be pulled to set the machine into full motion. The murder of politician Rafiq Hariri led to the Cedar Revolution. Looking back at the mysterious poisoning of Viktor Yushchenko right before the Orange Revolution of 2004, we see now that he became a sacred victim himself. Most political analysts believe the compassion of the Ukrainian people at that moment tilted the scales, giving him the presidency. The number of victims among the protesters during Euromaidan totaled over 100. They are called the Heavenly Hundred. All the sacred victims were immediately mythologized. The beating of students on November 30th, 2013 was the obvious trigger of Euromaidan. Those who sent trained provocateurs to the square very well realized that peaceful protesters were the ones who would get hurt the most. It's hard to keep protests going for months on end. Tensions subside and people inevitably get tired.
Are they playing chess?
Hurt the most. It's hard to keep protests going for months on end. Tensions subside and people inevitably get tired.
Looks like they were playing like big ass chess.
Holidays are also a big danger for revolutionary masterminds.
Gotta do something.
People,
keep them being bored at those things, I guess.
People want to be home with their families and friends, and one needs to get inventive to keep people in a cold tent city.
Yeah, I got ping pong going.
On Christmas Day of 2013.
It's gotta suck doing all that shit in the cold. I mean, it's always cold over there, but fuck. Yeah, it's like November, December.
Tabloid journalist and political wannabe Tatiana Chornovol was chosen to become the tool to whip the protests on Maidan back up.
A civic activist and journalist known for investigating corruption among senior officials was beaten outside Ukraine's capital on Christmas.
Jesus.
Her heroic deeds as a reporter looked more like petty crimes. Trespassing on the presidential residence of Viktor Yanukovych, leading a rioting crowd to seize the Kiev City Administration building, breaking into a car of the Security Service of Ukraine. It looked like Tatiana was more interested in making news than reporting it, and gaining name recognition that could be turned into votes for her struggling political career in the opposition party Fatherland. She gave the world media a Christmas present in 2013, when she was cruelly beaten by unknown assailants on the road. Despite the fact that in just 3 days all the suspects were arrested and confessed to beating Tatiana during a road rage incident, world media kept insisting upon the political...
Let's even get to the
very quickly.
actual change in the government here. I'm talking about Crimea.
И он был неизбежен. То есть фактически это не зависело от наших действий.
О том, как будут строить отношения между оппозицией и президентом.
The Ukrainian president and the leaders of the anti-government protests there have agreed on a truce.
The truce was to give talks between President Yanukovych and the opposition a chance.
Just like in 2004, the opposition, or at least its radical faction, the right sector, headed by Dmitry Yarosh, had no intention on fulfilling its part of the bargain.
Ті домовленості, які досягнуті, не відповідають нашим з вами прагненням. Правий сектор не складе зброї. Правий сектор не зніме з блокаду жодної з державних установ, поки не буде виконана найголовніша наша вимога – відставка Януковича.
Я подписал такой протокол, но немного позже я понял, что какой бы протокол мы ни подписали, сценарий захвата власти и государственного переворота.
He said the coup d'etat was already planned and it was inevitable. I mean, it seems that way. It seems like that was the plan.
Запланирован, и он был неизбежен. То есть фактически это не зависело от наших действий.
The opposition leaders left saying they may have found a way to end the bloodshed, but they wanted to take the conclusions from their meeting to the people.
It was soon apparent that the people were not happy.
И на следующий день господин Янукович уехал во второй по величине город страны, в город Харьков. Как только он уехал, захватили и его резиденцию, администрации, и правительство с помощью оружия. Как это называется? Захватили и его резиденцию.
Just that as soon as we read that part
People were not happy.
На следующий день
So the next day, Mr. Yanukovych left for the second biggest city in the country, and as soon as he left, both his residence and the government were seized by armed people.
И правительство с помощью оружия.
So this is like the literal coup right here.
Как это называется?
What do you call that?
Дело в том, что я
Fact
вылетел
is that I left for
туда
Kharkov by
вертолетом.
helicopter.
Машины, которые
My
меня
motorcade
должны
left
были
on its own.
сопровождать, выехали
But nobody knew
самостоятельно.
that.
Но этого никто не знал. Ехали президентские
As the presidential
машины, и по
vehicles were
этой
driving,
колонне
they were
президентских
fired
машин
upon.
был открыт огонь. Также была информация
Also, our intelligence
у
service had
нашей
information that
разведки,
there
что
were
были
mercenaries
специальные наемники, которым была поставлена
whose
задача
mission was
не
not to
захватывать
detain
президента,
President
а
Yanukovych, but
И я
to execute him. I asked President Putin for
президенту
permission to enter
Путину,
Russian
чтобы он
territory.
разрешил мне выехать на территорию России. Я получил согласие,
I got such
и мне
permission, was
была
provided
оказана
assistance.
24 февраля
February
я
24th, I
попал на
arrived in
территорию
Russia.
России.
So yeah, there it is. They ran him out the country. And that is that.
At the same time, Kiev was saying its last goodbyes to the victims of the massacre. It was also welcoming those who came to power at their cost.
Ukraine's parliament has voted for the new Speaker of the Assembly to become interim president. Alexander Turchinov called on lawmakers to form an interim government by Tuesday. These latest developments follow the dismissal of President Viktor Yanukovych on Saturday.
And they removed Yanukovych, not following the constitutional procedures for impeachment.
Процедура импичмента не была соблюдена. Для этого должен был быть привлечен Конституционный суд, Верховный
So for
суд.
impeachment, both
Этого не
constitutional and
сделали.
Supreme
И
courts have to be
голосовать в
involved
парламенте должны были
with at least
3/4
3/4
депутатов.
of parliament
Parliament of
members.
Ukraine consists of
That didn't
450
happen.
deputies. The Constitution of Ukraine requires at least a 3/4 majority to vote. In other words, 338 votes in favor of the impeachment, but only 328 deputies voted yes.
3/4 не проголосовали.
The U.S. State Department almost immediately said this was a legitimate government, and that was part of this effort to get regime change. Instead of trying to find some way to revive.
So they immediately recognize this new fucking Ukrainian government. But when the Taliban comes to power in Afghanistan, their first instinct is just to sanction them. It's like, oh, fuck these brown people. They can starve. Oh, we got some Ukrainians. Oh, some neo-Nazis want to run Ukraine. Okay, let's roll out the red carpet for them. What do you guys want? Some guns? Some bombs? Anything we can do for you? Ridiculous, man. And it's just one country we're doing this shit in. Like, there have been so many coups in Africa just this year alone. It's ridiculous. And we keep getting away with it because nobody talks about this shit. Everybody, it's not a matter of whether sanctions work or not. It's how much do the sanctions work? Should we sanction just a little or a lot? Should we sanction everyone or just a few people? You know, the United States has they have no right to sanction anyone whatsoever. It's really as simple as that.
The February 21st agreement, where maybe you could bring back Yanukovych in some titular way, that became not a possibility anymore. Then you had eastern Ukraine resisting, you had Crimea wanting to break away, and things rapidly escalated.
Voters will decide Sunday whether they'll leave Ukraine and join Russia.
The campaign with the slogan "Together with Russia" has the backing of Moscow.
The Crimea situation, the referendum, is also happening during this period very quickly.
Крымский референдум инициировали жители Крыма. Это была их.
Yeah, Karen, you said it's ridiculous, and that's where all our money goes. Yeah, pretty much. That's where all our money goes. It's ridiculous. And we gave so much money just to, like, Israel alone, and we spent so much money on our military budget, and all that goes to, like, coups and drone wars, and just like sanctions and naval blockades. American people didn't ask for any of this shit. We didn't vote for sanctions. That shit just gets greenlit by Congress or sometimes even the executive branch. So it's ridiculous, man. It's like you said, we could be spending all that money on wonderful things like schools, education, Medicare for all. I mean, like the list is endless, you know. No, we rather do things back asswards. You know, if you complain about it, you're a fucking Russian bot.
Их реакция на попытки представителей Майдана устроить такой Майдан в Крыму. Это не секрет, что население Крыма всегда было пророссийски настроено.
Crimean authorities, sensing the mood of the populace, fully supported Viktor Yanukovych's decision to postpone the 2013 European Union Association deal and side deeper ties to Russia. As the events in Kiev took their course, Crimean authorities issued a declaration, putting into words the fears of its people. Based on the will of the Crimeans who elected us, we declare that we will not give Crimea to extremists and neo-Nazis seeking to seize power in Ukraine at the cost of the blood of the country and its citizens. After the regime change in Kiev, rumors began spreading in Crimea that the new authorities would be merciless to those that opposed them. This led to the pro-Russian demonstrations rejecting the new government in Kiev. On February 27th, the government buildings in the capital of Crimea were seized by pro-Russian protesters. The current Crimean government was dismissed, and the new leader, Sergei Aksyonov, was assigned as the leader of the Crimean Autonomous Republic.
У них, конечно, надежда была, и они обращались к российскому руководству, чтобы их защитили.
On March 16th, the Crimean referendum was held, and the people voted to leave Ukraine and enter the Russian Federation.
The situation in Crimea is being presented as a Russian invasion. And again, nobody who looks at this seriously and looks at the poll numbers, some of the poll numbers done by the U.S. government agencies themselves, showing that the people...
Jesus. I didn't know it was that, like, staggering. 96.77% voted to join Russia. I didn't even think it was that. I didn't think it was that overwhelming. But yeah, so kind of a huge contrast between the Crimea situation and the Ukraine situation. Where like the Crimeans pretty much just voted to join Russia, when Ukraine, it's a little different. I don't think anyone, well, no, there's not too many people on the west side of Ukraine that would have voted to rejoin Russia. It's more of an East Ukraine thing. But yeah, 96.77. That's kind of overwhelming, man. But you'll never hear that like it talked about like that, and they'll never bring up these numbers in the U.S. media. They'll only talk about Crimea as, oh, Russia invaded that territory, and they just took it, they just plucked it and just put it in their pocket. They stole it. They stole it. It's like, nah, man, they fucking voted. You know? Let's just be honest here.
People of Crimea preferred being part of Russia. In the U.S. news media, it has all been presented as the Russians invaded, they then staged a sham election with people with guns at their backs. Somehow they faked the ballot boxes to get 96% approval for rejoining Russia.
The idea of a referendum in Crimea is just quite simply unconstitutional.
It does raise questions on whether this vote really is free and fair, especially given the heavy military presence in Crimea right now, Errol.
So that's how it's been sold to the American people. The reality is very different.
The atmosphere here certainly is electric. Thousands of people who've gathered in the capital Crimean city of Simferopol. All of this following a referendum held last Sunday in which the majority of people here overwhelmingly voted in support of being reunited with Russia.
Я бы хотел спросить, что такое демократия? Демократия – это политика, основанная на воле народа. Как выясняется воля народа? В современном мире с помощью голосования. Люди пришли, свыше 90%, и свыше 90% проголосовали за присоединение к России. Нужно уважать выбор людей. Не подстраивать каждый раз под свои геополитические интересы, международное право и принципы демократии. У нас не было там никаких боевых действий. Там никто не стрелял. Никто никого не убивал.
Yeah. And I suppose everybody was hoping that he would do something similar with you know, the Donbass region of Ukraine and, you know, all these other areas, that he would, you know, annex them real sly and cool and non-violent, like he did with the with like all sly and cool like they did with Crimea. But no, this time it got a lot more violent, so that's unfortunate. Yeah, Karen, I don't know about that. Yeah, no, the homies are cool. I don't know why you say that for. Where's all that coming from?
What is described in the West as a Russian invasion of Crimea is, in fact, the presence of Russian soldiers in Crimea. Can you clarify that?
Российские солдаты в Крыму, как говорят, были испокон веков. Потому что база Черноморского флота была в Крыму.
As long ago as 1804, Sevastopol's naval base became the main military port of the Russian Empire on the Black Sea. During the Second World War, the heroic defense of Sevastopol lasted almost a year and took hundreds of thousands of lives. Therefore, the naval base in Crimea has a legacy of historical pride for the Russian Black Sea Fleet, as well as being of huge strategic importance.
Interesting. Yeah, there's this one video I wanted to show. It was Vice, and it's kind of from the post-coup Ukrainian government side, but it does give a lot of insight into the buildup of why Russia invaded at this point. So I want to play that one really quick. Let me see. Library. Civilians, evidence map, which is it? Give me a second here. Shit, I thought it was in my history. How it's not showing my whole history. There we go. Sorry about the delay. Okay, here it is. Inside the trenches of war. So this was Vice News. And the only reason I'm playing it is to be balanced. You know, it's always good to hear both sides, even if, you know, one's a little more bullshit than the other, but there's something at the end that I did want us to So this video it's by Vice News. It came out 2021, June 15th, so not that long ago.
Для вас тоже есть информация. Готовы принять вопрос?
Готов принять информацию.
Рекомендуем вам в целях безопасности покинуть объявленный район. Рекомендуем в целях безопасности покинуть объявленный район. Как приняли меня? Вопрос принят.
Вас принял. Я Вильбо 356.
Every day, the Ukrainian Navy patrols the Sea of Azov on the lookout for Russian vessels. They don't usually get this close.
I can see on the TV screen here there's a Russian ship off in the distance.
Так, це корабель берегової охорони Російської Федерації, ФСБ, ПСКР. На нього встановлено озброєння. На даному кораблі встановлено озброєння, це артилерійська установка АК-630.
So yeah, even back then, the Russian army was they were lurking. You know, they were lurking around the Ukraine. But everyone knew that. They didn't know they were going to invade like that. However, let me fast forward to this interview that they do with this one guy towards the end.
What do you think about the politicians in Kiev? Do you think they're handling this war well?
And they're basically talking about the civil war between East and West Ukraine. And he asked him, like, he's asking this soldier, what do you think about the politicians? He basically just goes, no comment. I'll rewind it.
They're handling this war well.
He says, I can't describe them and their actions in a polite manner. And so he's speaking about his own government now. Remember, he's literally fighting the Russians, but he honestly can't say any kind words about his own government, which is something to take into account.
We've been in civilian areas along the front line where people have told us that they want the war to end immediately.
Скажу те саме, бедлачку. Не ми почали цю війну, не ми це до нас прийшли на нашу землю, а не ми на чужу. Це не від нас. Ми робимо, намагаємося зробити все з своєї точки зору.
Yeah, so I do feel really bad for the Ukrainians, man, because they really didn't ask for any of this, even though the whole neo-Nazi thing, that's something they probably could have avoided, but you know, that's just a consequence of nationalism, and nationalism is a unfortunate consequence of ignorance and poverty.
Щоб досягти перемоги, або як мінімум втримати їх тут. Ми свою роботу робимо.
Let me see. Thought. Shoot. I was looking for another video. It didn't have the interview that I was looking for in there, but screw it. I gotta wrap things up anyway. This has been a pretty kick-ass stream. Tips. So thanks for everybody who hung in there and stuck with me. Like, I learned a lot about Ukrainian history and how we got to this point. Closing remarks. We are fucked and everything sucks. So, yeah, smoke some weed. And smoke your weed with as many people as possible. 'Cause, I think everybody needs to get as high as humanly fucking possible in order to dial back all this war shit we got going on. Everyone needs to pump their brakes, cool their jets, settle down, all that good shit. And only marijuana is going to get us there. That's right. I have all the answers. And all the answers are marijuana. Yeah, Karen, we should definitely do this again sometime. I'm so glad you came. It was just so much fun. And I'm glad you kicked me in that video, too. That was, like, the perfect, like, encapsulation of, like, everything that's been going on. Explain everything really well. So, yeah, thanks a lot. You saved the day, Karen. But, yeah, I'm going to wrap things up. Probably eat some food. Roll up a doob. And, get some sleep soon. But, yeah, love you guys. You know, these are crazy times, but just, you know, hang in there. And it's going to be okay. And insert happy cliche here, I guess. You know, fuck it. It's going to be okay.